We are in this season of the church year called Eastertide. It's this time between the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus and Pentecost Sunday, when Jesus has given us the gift of his Holy Spirit. And in this period of time, historically, Jesus was, after he was resurrected, he was still visibly present to the people who lived with him at that time. And there are records of what we call post-resurrection appearances. Post-resurrection appearances. And Jesus actually appeared to quite a few people. Paul wrote this in 1 Corinthians, "For I handed on to you as of first importance what I in turn had received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures on Good Friday, that he was buried on that Friday, and that he was raised on the third day, on Sunday, on Easter, in accordance with the Scriptures." And then listen to this, "and that he appeared to Cephas." Cephas is the other name for Peter. "And then to the 12, to the other of his inner circle of believers. Then he appeared to more than 500 brothers and sisters at one time, most of whom are still alive, though some have died. And then he appeared to James, his biological brother, and then to all the apostles," this other group of Christ followers who were the ones sent out into the world. "And then last of all, as one untimely born, he appeared also to me." Now, the appearance to Paul was after Jesus had ascended to heaven, and he appeared to Paul in this vision as he was traveling on the road. The point is that Jesus was seen by many, many people, dozens of people, after he was resurrected in the body, in his resurrected body. Jesus was seen by many people. You know, our claim of this resurrection truth, of the truth of Easter, is mostly based on the collaborative evidence of the people who weren't there on Easter Sunday, but saw Jesus subsequently. People who knew him intimately, knew what he looked like, knew what he sounded like, who then were confronted by the fact that this Jesus, who was crucified and dead and buried, was now alive. And it was the conviction of those people that sent them out into the world to share that good news, even under the threat of death. All they would have had to say is, "No, I don't believe in Jesus. No, this didn't really happen. No, he wasn't ready." But they couldn't do that. Why? Because they had physical evidence. They had seen Jesus. And so what we're going to do is between now and Pentecost Sunday, the Sunday that the kids do their musical, is look at these post-resurrection appearances. These stories that we have in the Gospels of people who saw Jesus after he had been resurrected, before he ascends into heaven. There's just a handful of these stories. There aren't that many, but they appear in all four of the Gospels. Different stories, different accounts, different versions. And so we're going to look at the one this morning that is in the Gospel of Matthew, that Maureen was alluding to in teaching the kids. It's the only of these post-resurrection appearances that we have in the Gospel of Matthew. It's the very last paragraph in the entire Gospel account. But this little paragraph, this little vignette, may have had the biggest impact on the future of the church and you and I sitting here this morning. This little paragraph and the instruction it contains is one of the most profound statements of what our purpose in life is as individuals and as a community. This little vignette, this little post-resurrection appearance, is commonly called the Great Commission. Jesus giving his final instructions, his marching orders to his followers. And so we should pay close attention to this vignette. And here's what the Bible says in Matthew 28. Now the 11 disciples, Judas no longer being one of them, went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. That setting is very important, and we're going to come back to that. When they saw him, they worshiped him. But some, or all of them, doubted. It's a strange little word there, but we're going to come back and talk about that. Jesus came and he said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, of all people, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always to the very end of the age." This is extraordinary. There is so much packed in almost every line of this particular text. And what I'm going to do is kind of walk us through it and look at some of the pieces. You could actually preach an entire series of sermons just on this Great Commission. There are so many things that are kind of alluded to and going on, but I'm going to have to move through it a little more rapidly than that this morning. My friend Dan Dominich, our worship leader this morning, has often said that if you think of the letters of the word Bible, B-I-B-L-E, one thing you could interpret that is basic instructions before leaving earth. B-I-B-L-E, basic instructions before leaving earth. He's taught that to the kids. Well, this is Jesus's basic instructions before he left earth. This is Jesus's final word and commandment to his followers of what they're supposed to do with the rest of their lives, how they're supposed to live, what their purpose and mission in life is to be all about. And for that reason, we should pay special and careful attention to this. Back in Matthew 26, Jesus said, "After I'm raised up, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." And the setting of this very important teaching is on the mountain in Galilee. It doesn't say what mountain, it just says the mountain. But for careful readers of the Gospel of Matthew, you know that the most important teaching of Jesus in that gospel is commonly called the Sermon on the Mount, the Sermon on the Mount. So what is being alluded to here is go back to where it all started. Go back to where I first taught you my way of being in the world. And how significant is that? Because we know that later in this Great Commissioning, Jesus says to go into the world and teach people everything I've taught you. Well, where did the teaching start? On the mountain. Jesus sends him back to the place where he assumed the role of Moses, of the interpreter of the Torah. And that's where this takes place, this mountain to which Jesus had directed them to go, back in Galilee, back where it all started, back where they first met him, back where they were first called to follow him. Jesus appears to them on this mountain, in this place, the resurrected Jesus, the one with the marks of the nails in his hands, the wounds on his head and his side. And there he is, alive, resurrected. It's him, it's Jesus, our master, our rabbi, the one who we dropped everything to follow. There he is, and it says they worshiped him. Of course they did. He's alive, he's resurrected. What else could you possibly do? But some doubted. I have read and reread that line hundreds of times. It's got to be one of the strangest lines in all of Scripture. They worshiped him, but it could be all of them doubted, or it could be some of them. Grammatically, either one is accurate. But even if it was just one person, what are they doubting? Is it really Jesus? I mean, I think it's Jesus. He's talking like Jesus. He looks like Jesus. But maybe it isn't Jesus. Is that Jesus? Do you think that's Jesus? I mean, what in the world are they doubting? It is such a strange statement, but I think it is absolutely critical that Jesus and Matthew in his record of this includes that little note. This word doubt is not really about an intellectual doubting. It's much more about an uncertainty of what to do now. That's what it's getting at. Yes, it's Jesus. Yes, he's standing there. Yes, he's alive. Yes, he's resurrected. Yes, everything he told us that was going to happen has now happened. What do we do? What do you do with that? I'm not sure. What's the next step? How do we make sense of this? You know, having doubts, having uncertainties, having lack of clarity in our faith is not a sign of immature faith. I believe it's a sign of maturing faith, of growing faith. In fact, we need to have doubts. The fact that this is included at this critical moment, that some or all of them doubted, is actually an invitation to you and to me to grow in our faith, to ask the hard questions. You know, the other time when that word appears, the only other time in the gospel accounts, is in the story of Peter walking on the water. Anyone remember that story? When Peter and the disciples are in the boat and Jesus comes out to them on the lake and Peter says, if it's you, invite me to come. And he gets out of the boat and he's walking on the water. And then it says he sees the wind and the waves and he starts to sink. And Jesus reaches out his hand. And this is what it says. This is in Matthew 14. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught Peter, saying to him, you of little faith, why did you doubt? That's interesting. Peter had incredible faith. I mean, he got out of the boat. The other guys are sitting there like scared out of their mind. The guy got out of the boat. But then Jesus said he wavered. He wasn't sure what to do. He got distracted. He looked at the other things happening, the wind, the waves. And that, he said, was something that all of us will experience as we seek to follow Jesus, as we seek to grow in our faith. There are going to be times where we're not quite sure what is next. I find that extraordinarily comforting and incredibly meaningful. People who have all the answers, have it all together. I've got this Jesus thing covered. You know, I'm not sure they're growing. I love what Tim Keller, pastor who passed away not too long ago, author, said. He goes, a faith without some doubts is like a human body without any antibodies in it. People who go blithely through life, too busy or too indifferent to ask hard questions about faith, will find themselves defenseless against either the experience of tragedy or the probing questions of a smart skeptic. Doubting, questioning, not sure, I'm not quite sure I have this all together, friends, is not a sign of small faith. It's a sign of maturing faith, of growing faith. When our kids ask tough questions, or they're not sure whether they're in or out with this Jesus thing, a lot of parents can get pretty wigged out about that. Friends, don't be. Your child is growing in their faith. You know, one of the things I have appreciated the most about growing up in this particular tradition of Christianity that we call the Reformed faith and the Presbyterian Church is I have always been encouraged to ask questions. Questions were never seen as a threat to faith. They were seen as a catalyst to deeper faith. Asking questions, being uncertain, being able to be humble enough to say, I'm not sure what God is saying to me right now. I'm not sure what the next step is. That's all okay. Jesus, the resurrected Lord, is standing there in front of them, and some doubted. Some, all, everybody. What do I make of this? Jesus then says one of the most important things, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Jesus isn't just a little provincial leader. He's not just the Messiah for some people, but Jesus has been granted the full authority of God in the world. And then we get to the critical commission, the critical line, one of the most important verses in the entire Bible. All authority has been given on heaven and earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. That is the Great Commission. That is Jesus' final instruction. That is the ultimate call of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. To go therefore and make disciples of all nations. I want to start with the all nations part. The word there, ethne, is typically all the people who are not Jewish, all the Gentiles, and sometimes it's translated like that in certain parts of the Bible, certain translations of the Bible, but it means everybody. Everybody. Now there's just two extraordinary insights from that little line. Jesus' vision for this movement was not constrained or constricted or confined to some narrow little group of people. Jesus' vision was that his authority, his lordship, was meant to be embraced by all people, all the nations, everyone who has ever lived in every time, place, culture, country is called and has an opportunity to become part of his family. That's an amazing thing. This isn't some culturally bound thing that's only for some certain people who maybe grew up in a particular place or a particular time. No, it's for all the nations. The other thing about that particular line is the sheer audacity. I mean, you talk about a visionary leader. Here's a guy who was murdered just a few days before as a political criminal who grew up in this tiny province called Galilee, which is as backwater as you could get, surrounded by these 11 guys, 12, and now one completely out of the picture, who turned on him, betrayed him, denied him, ran away, had no status, no standing, no nothing, and he's standing on this mountain out in the middle of nowhere, and he says, guess what? You're going to go out and change the world, the entire world, the whole world, all the nations. Whoa! I mean, this vision of this movement that was confined in this tiny little group of people that would someday impact thousands. No, tens of thousands. No, hundreds of millions. Billions. A third of the people on planet Earth today, billions of people call themselves followers of Jesus. And it starts with this tiny little group of discouraged people who are doubting and uncertain of what the next step is. And Jesus says, you're going to go out and you're going to change the world. The sheer audacity, the magnitude of the vision is just staggering. What's he sending them out to do? To make disciples. Jesus says, go and make disciples of all nations. Now this is the most critical two words in this passage. Go and make disciples. Now, before anyone can make a disciple, there is one crucial and critical prerequisite. Before anyone can fulfill this most important commandment of Jesus, this commissioning, to go out and make disciples of all nations, there is one critical prerequisite. Does anybody know what that prerequisite is? You have to be a disciple. You cannot go out and make a disciple if you're not a disciple. You just can't do it. And so it raises the critical question, what is a disciple of Jesus? Who is a disciple of Jesus? Let me say a few answers that are not the right answer. One, a disciple of Jesus is not a member of a church only, or even necessarily, although they could be and they should be. A disciple of Jesus isn't somebody who reads the Bible every day, although they could be and probably should be. Disciple isn't somebody who says their prayers at meal times or before they tuck the kids in, although they could be or should be. A disciple is somebody who lives like Jesus. Going to church, saying our prayers, reading our Bible are all only important if they lead us to become more like Jesus, to live the way he lived. And how did he live? Well, go back to the Sermon on the Mount. If you want to know how Jesus lived and what he thought was important in how you and I lived, go back and read Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. That is the tightest, most succinct statement of what Jesus said. And you know what he said? Love your enemies. When you pray, pray privately. Don't make a big show about it. If you want to pray, here's a model prayer that you can follow. You need to pay attention to lust in your life. Jesus gave us clear commandments of how you and I, if we are going to be his disciples, are supposed to live our lives. He didn't substitute a new set of rituals and rules and regulations. He gave us a way to be in the world. I love what John Mark Comer says in his book called Practicing the Way, a book the men are reading right now on Wednesday mornings. He says, apprenticeship under Jesus, that is, being a disciple, is a whole life process of being with Jesus for the purpose of becoming like him and carrying on his work in the world. It's a lifelong journey in which we gradually learn to say and do the kinds of things Jesus said and did as we apprentice under him in every facet of our lives. Being a disciple is not just going to church for an hour one day a week, although that can be a component of it. Being a disciple is how you and I conduct ourselves in all of our business dealings. It's how we treat our wives and husbands and children on a day-to-day basis. It's how we choose to spend our money and how we budget our time and our energies. It is in finding significant ways to come alongside and serve the poor. It's working for reconciliation in the world, even with the people who have done us the most wrong. That's what it means to be a disciple. Everything else we do, if it's not in service to that, isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. If you go to church every Sunday and then you go home and kick the cat, friend, something is amiss. If you're regularly angry, if your budget does not include some kind of generosity toward others, if your life is always consumed about what you want and your comfort and your pleasure, then friend, you have ways to go to become a disciple. And if Jesus' great commandment to you and to me is to go out into the world and make disciples, and we're not a disciple, we can't do it. We can't do this great thing that Jesus has asked us to do. I love what Douglas Hare, a commentator, says. He goes, the nations are not to be converted to a philosophy, but to a unique way of living together in the Messiah's community. A way prepared not by the risen Lord, but by the earthly Jesus, by what he said and what he did. If you want to know what our lives are supposed to look like, look to Jesus. Read the Gospels. Immerse yourself in who Jesus was and how he lived, and then do the same. When you and I begin to do that, and our lives begin to get converted to the way of Jesus, then we're in a position to invite other people to do the same. People follow Jesus by following his disciples. People get to know Jesus by getting to know people who know Jesus, whose lives feel like his, who live with the same kind of compassion and grace and love and forgiveness that Jesus showed. That is what this is all about, friends. That's why Jesus said to teach all that I've commanded you. So right now you're doubting. I know you are. I'm not sure I am a disciple. Pastor just called me out. I'm not sure I'm up to this. I don't really even know who I'm supposed to go to. Great! You're worshiping and you're doubting, just like these guys who were confronted by the risen Lord. But you're here and you're willing to grow. You're wanting to change. That's the first and the most important step. And look, no one's going to get it right. We're not Jesus. We're just his disciples. We're just cheap imitations of the real thing. But friends, we are imitations. We are. You are. Somebody's going to see Jesus in you and me. Imperfectly, for sure. And that's why the last line of this is so critical. Because Jesus says, you're not in this alone. You can't do it by yourself. We're going to turn more people away from Jesus than attract people to him if it was all about us. We're too flawed and imperfect, but Jesus says, I'm not giving up on you. I will be with you. I am with you. I'm with you right now. He's here right now, encouraging you to overcome your hesitations and your doubts, to dig a little deeper, to make one more faithful step, one more faithful transforming decision. And then to be that person to invite somebody else into this extraordinary journey and adventure. This little post-resurrection appearance, this little vignette, is so beautiful, it's so powerful, it's so lovely, so convicting. It is his basic instruction to you and to me. Now all we have to do is do it. Jesus, thank you so much for your extraordinary call and giving us the Holy Spirit so that we can fulfill that calling. Oh Lord, teach us to follow you. And give us the courage to invite someone else on this same journey. In Jesus' name.